بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي، اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي. ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد الذي تنهل به العقد وتنفرج به الكرب وتقضى به الحوائج وتنال به الروائب وحسن الخواتيم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم على آله وصحبه في كل لمحة ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. اللهم في هذا اليوم المبارك فرج عنا وعن إخواننا في غزة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي لبنان وفي يمن وفي سائر بلدان المسلمين. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربهم وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والتفنا بهم يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. Okay, religious beliefs and dogmas. We had covered some of it, but we're just going to go over it to keep the continuity. Religious beliefs and dogmas according to the theory, that is psychoanalysis, are no more than merely primitive theories of nature, whereby mankind has tried to redeem reality from its elemental ugliness and to show it off as something nearer to the heart's desire than the fact of life would warrant. So it's just the refuge from the hard reality. That there are religions and forms of art which provide a kind of cowardly escape from the fact of life, I don't deny. All that I contend is that this is not true of all religion. So it doesn't apply to Islam. No doubt religious belief and dogmas have a metaphysical significance. What does that mean? So they have metaphysical significance. So they make metaphysical claims, or their claims have metaphysical implications, but they are not really about metaphysics or something like that. We'll find out. But it is obvious that they are not interpretations of those data of experience which are the subject of sciences of nature. So the purpose of religion. So religion has a subject matter. Religion, like any other sciences, have data of experience, and religion's data of experience is separate from the data of experience which are the object of sciences of nature. Religion is not physics or chemistry seeking an explanation of nature in terms of causation. It really aims at interpreting a totally different region of human experience. So religion is, so I missed all that, so I'll just repeat. So religion has its own data. So they both part. Religion is a faculty or a discipline within a university. The difference is physics deal with data of experience and religion deal with data of experience, but the region physics deals with is different from the region religion deals with. Religion deals with nature, physics deals with nature or the specific aspect of nature and interpret data from that specific region called nature. On the other hand, religion deals with a data of experience about a region called a specific region, which is a specific type of data which is called religious experience. And that's so it's a secular conception of religion. very Protestant conception of religion, because the data religion deals with relates to a self and self experience of its own self, in a sense, or what you call, or experience of God. But this is a subjective experience, because he has already told us that religion deal with, the purpose of religion is to interpret this is specific data, which is data based on this self-experience, a specific type of self-experience about a being called God. So it is a secular conception of religion, a secular conception of religion as a discipline among other disciplines, whose data is very specific, and it deals with and interprets that data, and that data is about religion experience, which is the experience of self. It's very Protestant as well. Self's experience about the region called God. So it's not the experience of self through nature, but about nature, but about something called God. Anyway, and this seems odd with his emphasis that Quran talks about nature and all that. But I guess he would say it talks about nature as a sign of God. But specifically, religious experience is the experience of God. At least in here, that's what he is getting at. So nature, religion is not physics or chemistry seeking an explanation of nature in terms of causation. It really aims at interpreting a totally different region of human experience, religious experience, the data which cannot be reduced to the data of any of other sciences. It's a specific data. It's an autonomous science. In fact, it must be said in justice to religion that it insisted on the necessity of concrete experience in religious life long before science learned to do so. So that is science. Religion deals with experience, concrete experience. And it started dealing with concrete experience even before science. So it's basically established science in a sense. The conflict between the two, that is physics and religion, is due not to the fact that one is and the other is not based on concrete experience. Both seek concrete experience as point of departure. Their conflict is due to the misapprehension of both. So not just, so it's not just physics which is at fault, but religion is at fault too. Both interpret the same data of experience. But that's the conflict. But that's wrong, because religion doesn't try to interpret the same data. So religion deals with a specific region in a self-autonomous way. The only similarity between physics and religion is that they both are concrete. That is, they both start with sense experience, and they deal with the reality, which is a concrete reality. Even though religion is dealing with God, so self to another self, which is the God. But that experience is not intellectual experience, but it's a concrete experience based on sort of dreams or dream-like experiences. Um, so it is concrete in that sense. So it's basically inward form of concreteness. So religion is a form of psychology in this view, or psychology of a specific type of experience of self, which is the experience of God. That's why he's so interested in psychology. So this conflict is basically based on misunderstanding, and it can be resolved very easily when both can be told by, I guess, philosophy that they're dealing with different types of reality, so they don't need to worry about each other's, transgressing or transgressing on each other's domain. So they don't have to worry that they are trespassing on each other's domain. We forget that religion aims at reaching the real significance. We forget that religions aim at reaching the real significance, of a special variety of human experience, which is self-experience, but even not all of self-experience, but experience of selves about something it thinks is another self, and it calls it God. Okay, nor is it possible to explain away the content of religious consciousness by attributing the whole thing to the working of sex impulse. Okay, that's his critique, a partial critique of psychoanalysis. Two forms of consciousness, sexual and religious, are often hostile or at any rate completely different to each other in point of their character. So there's a form of consciousness called sex, and there's a form of consciousness called religious consciousness. Where is the Hegelian wholeness? Are often hostile or at any rate completely different to each other in point of their character, the aim and the kind of conduct they generate. The truth is that in a state of religious passion, so it's a form of passion as well. So it's a very intense experience, self-experience. So it includes passions, feelings. We know the factual reality in some sense outside the narrow circuit of our own personality. So God, we know a factual reality. To the psychologist, religious passion necessarily appears as the work of subconscious because of the intensity with which it shakes up the depths of our being. In all knowledge, there is an element of passion in all knowledge. So passion is not just specific to religion. And the object of knowledge gains or loses its objective with the rise and fall or in the intensity of passion. That is most real to us, which stirs up entire fabric of our personality. In all knowledge, there is an element of passion, and the object of knowledge gains or loses its objectivity. So passion is not something which is contrary to objectivity. In fact, it is an indicator of objectivity. And there we come back to Hawking, because there Hawking had sort of connected feeling to the reality outside us, and feeling as part of knowledge. So at least he is trying to establish that even though it is a religious experience, this experience is the experience of a self and this experience is different from it has its own specific region, but that region has a reality outside us. We call it God. uh, uh, the sort of religion he is defining claims objectivity of that reality, and hence the objectivity of this subjective experience. If ever, as Professor Hawking pointedly puts it, if ever upon the stupid day-length time span of any self or saint either, um, if ever upon the stupid day-length time span of any self or saint either, some vision breaks to roll his life and ours into new channels, it can only be because the vision admits into his soul some trooping invasion of the concrete fullness of eternity. Some such vision doubtless means subconsciousness readiness and subconscious resonance too, but the expansion of the unused air cell does not argue that we have ceased to breathe the outer air. The very opposite. So basically, he's saying that it must have some outer reality as well. It can't be just inner reality, because if you have inner transformation, something is affecting you from outside as well. That's compatible with, or that's commensurate with, or compatible with, or um, what he said earlier, Hawking's quotation earlier, that feeling is not just something passive, and feeling is not mere subjective variation within subject, but feeling is the basis of knowledge as well. So, if ever upon the stupid day-length time span of any self or saint either some vision breaks to roll his life or ours into new channels, it can only be because that vision admits into his soul some trooping invasion of the concrete fullness of eternity. Such vision doubtless means subconscious readiness and subconscious resonance too, but the expansion of the unused air cells does not argue that we have ceased to breathe the outer air. The very opposite. As purely psychological method, therefore, our purely psychological method cannot explain religious passion, because religion passion has objective reality. Does that mean psychological passion doesn't have objective reality? Probably not, as a form of knowledge. It is bound to fail in the case of our new psychologists, as it did fail in the case of Locke and Hume. How did in the case of Locke and Hume is not very clear at this point, because obviously at least Locke doesn't deny religious knowledge. And you can say Locke is not a pure empiricist, as Hume criticized him, and Berkeley as well. So the foregoing discussion, however, is sure to raise an important question in your mind. Religious experience, I have tried to maintain, is essentially a state of feeling. So that's it's a type of feeling with a cognitive aspect. A feeling which has cognitive content. So it is feeling, but not like any other feeling. Of specifically, this feeling is not just purely subjective. It has objective content or objective significance. Okay, the content of which cannot be communicated to others. Okay, so how do you have revelation? Or how do mystic actually Like, does that mean what Imam Rabbani in Maktubat? That's not the communication of that experience, except in the form of so content which cannot be communicated to others except in the form of judgment. So in the form of knowledge. So how else are we going to communicate knowledge if not in the? So maybe the subjective element of that experience cannot be communicated, but that can't be true either. Like, I guess he's saying the way we can't communicate pain to others, like others can't feel my pain, even though I can explain or describe my pain, but that description will never approach, the level in which you can actually experience my pain. In a similar way, I can explain the religious experience, but it can't amount to, or it can't actually explain the experience itself. So you can't actually experience the religious experience, no matter how finely I actually try to convey that experience to you. What I can convey is the content of that experience in the form of judgment. Now, when a judgment which claims to be the interpretation of the interpretation, so not just a communication of certain region of human experience, not accessible to me, because it's a subjective experience here. It is not intersubjective. So physical experience is communicable because it is intersubjective experience. On the other hand, religious experience, like other subjective experience, is not communicable in that sense because it is not intersubjective, but that doesn't mean that it is not objective. A certain region of human experience not accessible is placed before me for my assent. I am entitled to ask, what is the guarantee of its truth? That's a fair question, isn't it? Are we in possession of test which would reveal its validity? If personal experience had been the only ground, if personal experience only ground for acceptance of judgment of this kind, religion would have been the possession of few individuals only. So personal experience is not the only ground for the acceptance of. So let's dwell on this a bit. So religion deal with, according to this point anyway, religion is deal with a specific region of human experience, and that human experience is subjective in the sense that it is not an intersubjective experience, and it's the experience of a reality which is outside me, which is called God. And this experience is based on feeling, passions, and all that, but it has objective content as well, which is in the form of interpretation, conveyed in the form of judgment. But I can't convey my experience like the very subjective experience, although I might be able to describe those experiences, but you can't you can't actually experience those experiences as you can't experience my pain, for example. So the question is how we can judge the validity of these claims about objective contents of religion. That's his question. What's the test? So he's saying subjective test is not the only test. I think one of the things which he will get at, I mean, subjective test also applies because that's the personality of the Prophet, for example, or the Sufi or the mystic. But I think what he will get at, if I have to anticipate, he will say, another test would be the consequences of if we implement those interpretations in a society. So the social fruits or consequences of the implementation of those insights will provide a test. The pragmatic test would be another test, I guess, but we'll see. Happily, we are in a position of test which do not differ from other applicable to other phenomena. These I call intellectual tests. So, okay, and the pragmatic test. So intellectual test and pragmatic test. Okay, that's getting interesting. So religious experience is subjective experience with objective claims, and the test of those claims is not just subjective. There is a subjective test as well, which he sort of tried to develop in this lecture. But there are two other types of tests: intellectual test and pragmatic test. uh, I sort of was trying to get to a pragmatic test just before, but he has intellectual test as well. So these two tests he'll talk about in the next lectures. Okay, among other things. Now he briefly by the intellectual test I mean critical interpretation without any presupposition of human experience, generally with a view to discover whether our interpretation lead us ultimately to a reality of the same character as it is revealed in religious experience. So that's basically kalam, or philosophical justification of religious experience. By the pragmatic, he means test judges by its fruits, social fruits, individual fruits like character building, etc. The former is applied to the philosopher by the philosopher, later the prophet. The lecture that follows, I will apply the intellectual test for the religious experience. Philosopher, I will include Kalam here as well, and prophet can be a philosopher as well to an extent. Okay, so we are finished with the first chapter. I don't know whether I'll need to come back to this, otherwise we'll say that we have finished our first reading of the reconstruction, the first chapter of the reconstruction of religious thought in Islam. Please make dua for me and my parents, and may Allah forgive them. Allahumma ighfir li wa li walidayya wa lil mu'minina jami'a, and make pray for the shuhada of Gaza and shuhada of Lebanon and shuhada of Yemen and shuhada of Iran and Pakistan and all other Muslim countries. And also pray for the children and the helpless people in Gaza. May Allah give them respite from this cruel Nazi regime, which is bombing them day and night. Also, please pray for the soul of Allah Iqbal. May Allah forgive his shortcomings, and may Allah reward him for his struggle for his deen. And may Allah forgive us for any shortcomings in understanding this, and may Allah increase us in knowledge and insight and in amal. اللهم اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفرك ونتوب إليك أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا وشاهدنا وغائبنا وصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وأنثانا اللهم من أحييت منا فأحيي على الإسلام ومن توفيت منا فتوفه على الإيمان رب اغفر لي ولوالدي والمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. اللهم اغفر لأبي وأمي. اللهم اغفرهما. اللهم ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. اللهم اغفر لآبائي وأجدادي وأمهاتي ومشايخي وآباء مشايخي وآباء أجداد مشايخي وأمهات مشايخ. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. اللهم اغفر اللهم محمد إقبال. اللهم اغفره وارحمه. اللهم اغفره وارحمه. اللهم أجزه أن أحسن الجزاء يا رب العالمين. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وآله وأصحابه وأهل بيته وذريته أجمعين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. بحرمة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله اللهم آمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.